Hey guys, today we're in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 25. We're still in this fifth section of all the rules and laws of how Israel should act between one another and others, so the general laws. We pick up today with even more general laws, basically telling us one is about the laws on capital punishment, that they couldn't just beat somebody forever. They could only give them 40 lashes, no more. And then in verse 4, we see that it says, "You shall not muzzle an ox when it is treading out the grain." You should not put a mask over the ox. You should let him eat and graze and do what he wants as he's working. So this is speaking to the humane treatment of animals within Israel. Verse 5 through 10 talks about the Leverite marriage. This is like the Ruth and Boaz point. And it just simply says that if a brother dwells together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside of the family. It was looked on in Israel to be very bad when a male did not have a son, did not have somebody to pass down the land and the inheritance. Remember, the land is to stay in the family's name and in the tribe's name. So the wife couldn't remarry because then the land would leave the family's name. So the land was important. So she needed an heir to pass over the land to. And so that's why it says if she doesn't, then her brother-in-law could take her as a wife. But the firstborn son is to be named after his dead brother. It is not named after her brother-in-law. It is named after her dead husband, so that the name and the inheritance will stay in the right family and in the right tribe. And so what's interesting about this section, though, is in our English Bibles, it says son, son. If he has no son, if he and the firstborn son who bears. But in the Hebrew, it doesn't say the word son. It says the word child, making it male or female, because we have seen already in Scripture where somebody doesn't have a son, then the female could take the inheritance. We've seen that problem as some daughters came up to Moses and said, "Hey, my parents never had a son. What should we do?" And the Lord told him, then the women, the girls, can take the inheritance. And so in our English Bible, it says son. In the Hebrew, it says child, because God had already solved that problem. So even if the brother-in-law marries his sister-in-law and gives her children but never produced a male, well, that doesn't end it. Then it would just pass on through the female who would take after her dead father's name, and so kind of solves that problem. But if he would not do that, she was to take him to the city gates, which is the court, and she would pull off his sandal, saying the power and the authority, slap him in the face, slap him and hit him with the sandal, and then spit in his face. And it says he will forever be called the house of him who's had his sandal pulled. So which means the house of someone that is without power, who has shame. And so that is a very important part. So it was a duty that every male had to his brothers, that if that was to happen, he would have to do that, or it would penalize him and his family for the rest of their life. Let's see, verse 11, we start out when two men are fighting and a wife of one of the men steps in and seizes him by the private parts, hits him in his testicles, grabs and pulls. It says that the woman's hands should be cut off. And you think, wow, that's kind of drastic. The point is that the men are fighting, but they're not killing each other. But the woman is striking the man that she could potentially murder future generations. She could hurt him so bad that he could not have children after that. And so that is considered murder. So she does not get killed, but it is a stark reminder that what you should do and what you should not do. And so that's why it says that they should cut off her hand. Verse 13 through 16 is talking about business. They should not have two pairs of weights, one that is heavy, one is light. If somebody comes in to put scales, do business on it. If you're gonna sell something by a pound, sell it by a pound. Don't try to trick them in business. God looks down on this. And those of you who are reading through the prophets with us, you'll see Israel did this all the time. Even though it is commanded against them not to do this, Israel does this all of the time. And God truly brings wrath and judgment because of this issue. And that's why it even says in verse 16, they are an abomination. And we'll see this is the reason why the Lord sends the Assyrians and basically wipes out all of Israel, because they were guilty of this. He also says, remember what Elimelech did to you on the way as he came out to Egypt. This is kind of like an example of what he was talking about, of being fair. Elimelech is the comes from Esau in Genesis chapter 36. He's the father of the Amalekites. And if you remember in Exodus chapter 17, Israel was leaving and the Amalekites came by and they were attacking, not Israel as a whole, they were attacking the back end. They were attacking those who were weary and tired and the stragglers. They were picking off kind of the old and the weary, right? And so God says, hey, don't take advantage of the old, the weary, the stragglers, the tired. If you're going to do something, do it right. And so he's using this as an example of the business dealings that we just read above. And you'd ask yourself, where do we see Jesus in this chapter? Well, it may be a little bit difficult, but we see some similarities of Jesus on this earth. Jesus cared for those who were tired, who were weary, who were stragglers, those who were down and out. He went against those who were fixing weights in the temple, right? He goes in and flips the tables because they were selling animals and things and not giving the right currency, so they were tricking people. So we see a lot of this, and even in the Leverite marriage, we see Ruth and Boaz, and out of that comes Jesus, right? So almost in every one of these laws, we see a little glimpse of Jesus as we see him in the New Testament. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 26. God bless.